Hi, Ben here from Supercoach Insider, bringing you my team into round 4. Now, I messed up. That's pretty much how we'll start this session. So, in years gone by, I've kind of acted too late in some areas and missed out on a Sinclair, missed out on Marshall a couple of years ago, missed out on Aaron Hall a couple of years ago. And with the additional trades and the fact that I started so well, I wanted to make a move. So the idea was with the Darcy Cameron came out that he'll be getting the sole ruck. He's been averaging well. He'll get the sole ruck. The split was already good with Cox in the side. So I thought, well, with the boost in the next sort of a month period, I thought Cox would be a top 6 forward and at least be able to give you that DPP swing and buy me some time, which pretty much went back to my original strategy. So for me, it was a correction trade. I actually went Witts out to Darcy Cameron. And it didn't work out so well. So, and these are the things that happen. I slept really well knowing that, I made a decision. And if I was put in the same circumstances, I'd like to think that I would do it again. So it didn't work out. And I had a few people messaging me like, why would you do that? Because, Witts is averaging really well. And realistically, in hindsight, another week's of data, I would have just flogged Marshall off to get Darcy Cameron and everything would have been absolutely hunky-dory. So, yes, look, that's where we're at this current point in time. I scored 2,095, so not a very good week, especially seeing that, I lost, I think, about 30 points. Actually about 20 or so points on the Witts train. So I would have got a little bit there. But the reasoning is that, okay, so I went into going, Witts was a good player, and he is definitely a good player. But in my eyes, I saw English being the number 1, and he was heavily owned English and was already sort of creeping up. Darcy Cameron as well was heavily jumped on. So if I thought he was a top 6 forward, then I could actually get him at a low price, free up 130,000 that I could then use to get Oliver, which was my eventual goal. In a few weeks' time was to try and get in Clary. And again, a week starter's changed that. So I'm just trying to get everyone in my side, and it's not really working out as I planned. But that's what we do in Supercoach. We kind of adjust to the statistics, to the data. So going on it was like, okay, well, Darcy Cameron heavily owned. People jumping in. He looked like a top 6 forward. He was obviously at a basement price. Witts was obviously the overpriced side of things, still performing very, very well. But at that point, I was kind of handcuffed in. I had Witts, I had Marshall, and it was a set and forget kind of strategy where you're really locked in, and the only way to kind of move on from that would be to trade one of them to the other person who would be top 1 or 2 that you miss. And that's always the risk with the set and forget, which is why I kind of thought about starting Darcy Cameron. And in the end, it would have worked out. He was on, I think, 75 or 80 points, 85 maybe, 85 at like 3/4 time, was killing it. So the idea is that you then go and put Darcy Cameron in the ruck line. It would then buy me some time. I could then watch and see, with English, who I really wanted, and then hope that he'd have a bad game and I'd be able to pick him up and then throw Darcy Cameron forward, and then everything is the merrier. So that was pretty much how it worked out. I was trying to uncuff my ruck line to give me a little bit of flexibility, have a top 6 forward who I thought was going to be very versatile and valuable at the time. And the other thing to note as well is that Witts was only like 15% or less owned, whereas Darcy Cameron was jumping on like heaps of value, and I didn't want to like miss out if he did continue to go big. Then that's one of the moves, if you didn't kind of go for it, that you could actually sort of watch your ranking slip. And in the end, it's kind of a little blessing in disguise. I've got enough money to go with the English, which I'll get into anyway. But my rank did slide. Now, partly because I didn't emergency Baker, so I've expressed my contempt, I guess, or disgust in myself and the team's situation because of Thursday night footy and, the team's coming out Thursday just before, to work out who else was playing. Daylight savings up here. So the games are starting at 6:20 p.m. I'm busy. I've got family duties from like 5:30 till 7. So I'm getting in halfway through. I'm trying to at the dinner table while my children are feeding and my partner's looking at me, and I'm trying to flick through teams to work out who's in, who's out, and copying a bit of grief that way. So I thought, look, I'll just leave it. I'm not really making any changes tonight anyway, and I didn't have the eat on Baker. So that was the big one. However, there was some salvage which I will get into. So So 5,000 ranked overall. I'm not too upset about that, but there are a few people that I am looking at this current point in time, and let's get into it. So classic. Now I've got just enough to go and get rid of Cameron to English. So like I said, a little bit of a blessing in disguise because I see English as the number one. Injury concerns or whatever aside, if he's fit, he is the number one point scorer in that ruck line, and I think he could be as much as 10 points better than the next ruck, which is why I thought he would be a must-have, and I still think he's a must-have, but here's the interesting part. People don't have money right now, and they don't really have someone that they can get rid of. Now, the only one is like Callahan. People might try and go down and free up some money that way. But outside of that, people are going, okay, I want to get rid of Cameron, but they're forced to try and go with a Grundy, or is Grundy value? Is he good value? Oh, yeah, he's going to make money. And they're forced to kind of go cheaper. And I think English is probably going to go up heavily in ownership. I stupidly said, I was like, hey, you go up like 60%. I thought he'd be 60% owned by the end of this week. I don't think that's the case. So I guess we'll have a look at who's in and who's out as far as percentages. English is going up 7%, so only 11,000. Wow. So that's very, very interesting. And he'll be 26%. So it looks like it's only about 35% owned, which is crazy considering that how much 30,000 people are getting rid of Darcy Cameron and only 11,000 are bringing in English, which means that there's a lot of issues there. Outside of the fact that it looks like some might be in that forward line, so I guess that does help them a little bit. But I think English is definitely the best option if you can get there. Now, for me, it's real simple. Outside of everything else I want to do, I am not bringing in Grundy. So English is the blessing in disguise. I've got just enough. Thank you, Bryce Mitchell, as well on Twitter for shouting out the possible prices. And both of his calculations, depending on the magic number, I actually scraped in. So I'm really, really happy that I scraped in for that. All right. So that's the easy fix. Now I can just leave my team at this. Do I like it? No, not so much. Callahan is a big pain in my ass. And after week one, I was absolutely flying. I was loving it. He got 100, like super late on that 100. And killing it. So the big issue in my side at this current point in time, probably Ridley is an issue. And also I'm going to say Callahan is probably my other big issue. Now, where I did do well last week is that I actually brought in Chandler and I got rid of Constable. I was tossing up Constable I kept Constable. Chesser was the one I was considering. So I was like, well, hey, Chesser's at least playing. He's a warm body. Do I back that over a few more games he might get better? And that's what I was sort of toying up. But in my head, I was like, okay, well, even if Callahan doesn't do well and Chesser does really well, he won't make much cash because he was so bad in the first 2 weeks. And I was like, hey, worst case, he looks really good. The role's good. He's picking it up. He's not sub, and I can always bring him in. So in the end, it was a little bit of a blessing there because I could have, at least Constable, I'm hoping, racked up like 30 touches. Hopefully he might get a gig. You've got McPherson. I'm hoping that he used to play in that forward sort of flank kind of role. He'd be perfect at it, and he's been playing in that back sort of pocket area. So I'm hoping that they go, okay, well, Flanders injured, McPherson, you go play forward, similar role to what you have done, and now we bring Constable back into that defensive line. Now, that would be the ideal situation for him to make money. So fingers crossed as far as that element. I haven't even looked at teams. See, I told you, family times. As far as the Thursday night, going to be a real interesting game. They're going to that one tomorrow night, which will be awesome. Up here. So the thing that I did speak about the week before, Hopper, I considered getting rid of, especially when Baker went big. I was like, man, now I feel like I have to get rid of Hopper. I'm glad I didn't, because if I didn't get Chandler, I was bringing in Warple with the money I had. And I even considered going Callahan to Warple, and both would have been spuds. So look, I'm pretty happy. Outside of my Callahan pick, I'm pretty happy generally speaking. I'm a little concerned that I underestimated Long and Davey, particularly, as well as, what's the St Kilda forward 102K who's doing, very reasonably well because Saints keep winning. I really need each and every one of those small forwards plus the Saints forward to I need them to stall because at this point they are hurting me. And I was like, no, I don't want a small forward that could drop a 30 any week. And they keep chipping away with 60s and 70s, which is really painful because they're jumping up in price. So I kind of need that to happen this week. I'm not bringing them in now. I'm not paying 160 or 170,000 for a small forward. It makes zero sense. I can't even really understand people jumping. And Chandler, like, yes, I know he's jumped like 75,000. So he might have another 100 to make, maybe. But, you've got like Pickett and stuff coming back in. So I'm like, I don't know about his security. I think he'll still get a game because he's playing well. But if he doesn't play well this week, then there's no guarantees he'll be in that side anyway. So I think there's a real interesting dynamic there. Those that got on, I think, are extremely excited. I know like JP, who won last year, I think is looking at bringing Chandler in this week. So don't be too alarmed if you're considering that. But yeah, 206,000. Look, I know it's definitely an option. I guess with West Coast this week, you would assume that he's named because, he kicked a few goals last week, which was part of the buffer in his side. But, yeah, I mean, and the soft draw that they have. So, look, I guess I'm not completely against bringing in Chandler. I just think if you were, you probably would have liked to have done it last week. Speaking of last week, I wish I probably got rid of, Constable or someone or other and brought in a Long and just try to free up some cash and get out of my own way and my own mistakes. Speaking of mistakes, now one thing I did notice about Callaghan, he plays half a game. And by that, I mean, it's no fault of his own. He's a good player, but GWS play the exact side of the field, and they have, I think, for at least 2 of the first 3 rounds. Now, I can't speak so much about last week because he copped the shoulder knock, so I don't know if they went through him as much anyway, but round 1 and round 3, they pretty much, he would only get 2 quarters of opportunity because the other one, he's just running inside, and they're just using the exact same side of the field, which is really painful because his 45, if they actually balanced it out and used it him, like on a switch or anything that would actually incorporate him more, then he would do fairly well, I think. So I'm tempted to hold. I'm tempted to free up cash. I don't know if there's a right way on Callaghan because I think there is potential there. We've seen his basement at this point. This is the low, and I'm not really keen to stick around and find out how long it stays for. So for me, I'm quite keen to free up some cash and start to make some moves. And the issue is that me getting rid of Callaghan doesn't give me enough cash to actually get in Oliver. So if anyone's following me on Twitter, so SC Insider 100, I think this is the week for the English and Clary train, if you can get it. Now, the reason being is that when you go and have a look at the D's fixture, now, outside of the fact they're playing an Optus, and I know he hasn't done well against West Coast previously, my concern is that Clary's on such good form that he's going to towel up and really hurt you if you don't have him. Now, it's a big possibility, which we know some people are betting against. They're shorting the stock because of what has happened previously against West Coast, etc. But I also argue West Coast don't really have a defensive mid at this point that's any good. Now, previously you had Redden, you would have like Shuey and these other guys that were fit enough to play in there. So, I mean, Tim Kelly's not that person. Gaff's on the outside. Jinby maybe's got, I think, leading the tackle count in the competition. But that's a tough ask going, hey, by the way, you've played 3 games and now you're playing on the best midfielder in the competition. Yeah, so look, I think it's going to be very dangerous. Next week as well, they play Essendon, who we know can leak a lot of points to mids. It's just what they do. So I think hopefully Setterfield, if he's fit, might actually probably go to him, and that might help him score really well. Richmond are leaking a huge amount of points at the moment in the midfield. Same thing again, looking at defensive mids, they just back their system in. North Melbourne, another sort of situation there where, like he could just towel up. Suns, we just saw what happens. They just let people run around. It's absolutely crazy. And they'll just go and put like not Tuchel, I guess he might go head-to-head, but otherwise they just put like a Rowell or someone on there. And then Hawks. Now, good luck trying to tag Clare anyway, because even Brisbane put some attention on him. He got 37 touches. Mills went into the centre bounce to kind of put a bigger body on Clary and just gave away a 50-metre penalty and a free kick, and Clary still towed up. Now, this is against some of really quality players in Berry and Mills, and Clary's just toweling up and doing whatever he wants. So it's literally ridiculous. Now, the only concern with Clary for me is, and this goes to a hypothesis, so I was making inferences in the start of the season about maybe if they were trying to change his CBA percentage and to provide some flexibility so that way they don't burn out for finals, then if they get onto a heater against some of these weaker sides, they could find him being rested more or played from back flank or something at a CBA because they don't need him in these rounds. Whereas when you have a top 8 team, they need to win those top 8 battles so they can then become top 4, which we all know top 4 helps your chances to win a premiership. So if they're playing a good opponent, I can't see them switching his role at all, which is pretty much what has happened in that first month so far, well, the first few weeks. So whether they won 2 out of 3, and he's pretty much played a huge amount of CBA in that time. So, look, I think it's damaging. So, you could wait, but again, this week, next week, Richmond, North, Suns, Hawks, Port as well. Port have got... they're not really running the biggest midfield at that current point in time. Fremantle just leaking points like crazy at the moment. Carlton, he'll match up pretty well against anyway. Collingwood don't generally tag either. Geelong and Bunnies. Giants have pretty much just run straight up. So look, I just think the matchups for Clary at this point are really, really good, which is why it's kind of Operation Get Clary. So here's the issue. Clayton Oliver is heavily owned, and everyone that has that ownership is putting a captain on. So I wanted him preseason. I kind of got scared off by the CBA talk, and I was looking at my structure going, okay, well, I can only sort of fit in a few. I thought Laird with the home games, which is why I sort of leaned towards him. And I was like, I could just wait and see. Clary will just chip away like he does. But, he started off really well. So do I want to sabotage? Now, anyone to Clary is an upgrade because he is the probably number one, as well as English, the number one targets. Now, is it a sideways if it's an upgrade? It's hard to know. I don't like burning trades just to kind of trade one premium to another. Generally, just kind of wait it out and see. But when they're a captain option and they're heavily owned and lots of people are jumping on, if you're not on them, then you might catch them later in the year and, on the back burner, and you'll just negate that advantage that they have. But if they go well and you're not on, you just start to slide. And then you're backing in like Bontempelli, who has looked really good, mind you, Bontempelli. I want to keep him because, who are they playing? They're playing Richmond, and Richmond just leak points. I think he averages 125 against Richmond over 8 games or something stupid. Like, he's literally doing so well, so I don't want to touch him. Green I also considered, but then when you have a look at sort of, Green, his numbers are stacking up really well. He just hasn't sort of turned it on as much. Still averaging better than I was kind of expecting. A couple of, weaker weeks, to a sense. But when you have a look, it's like, okay, well, they've got Essendon this week who they could rack up a lot of ball against anyway. Then Hawks. And then Brisbane, who, he should match up pretty well against Brisbane anyway. Sydney, they've got that battle for anyway. So I'm looking at those next few. And then after that, you kind of go, okay, well, Saints maybe still be back at that point. They've also got Richmond again, who leak more points again. North Melbourne come into that mix. And then they play Hawth, Adelaide, Suns again in the back run home. So it's, just trying to work out where to go and who to get rid of is the big issue at this point. So I want him. I can't say much more about it, to be honest. I want him. But there's limitations as to how I get there. Now, I could go Callahan down to the cheaper mid that's on the brink. Now, he was the one that Sydney forced GWS to play for. Could be the one where they switch picks and then they bid on them, which I thought was hilarious. Absolutely crosstown rivalry. So, look, I'm considering that because I'm not going to have Callahan on field anyway. Let's put it that way. Chandler's doing well enough. I've actually got Goulden on the side here. Goulden is someone that I considered even maybe trying to move on if I could get, 200,000. But to get 200,000 is a big deal. It's kind of hard. And the only one I can do that with is, say, Ridley, and it's not that favourable. So, I mean, you're looking at, and the reason is because I don't think I got Dacos the other week. So I was like, okay, well, I had to get some rookies. So I had some cash, and then I got Dacos. So I've got the extra premium in there. So I was like, okay, well, I could always just then get rid of one premium to kind of get Clary. But it doesn't really make sense. It doesn't really sound right. And again, I'm trying to justify each and every scenario in this, which is the challenging part. So I was considering even like Ridley down and getting rid of Ridley for someone else and freeing up some cash that way. Even to the point where I was like, hey, if Yo's named, no one will have Yo, which is why I think it's a real balls out strategy. If Elliot Yo is named, it's super risky. And the reason I think it could work is if he stays healthy, of course, and if he has the same role in the preseason, which is all a guess, obviously. More data is key, and you would love to wait for 2 weeks and then move on. But my argument is in 2 weeks' time, you're not really going to be bringing him in unless you have an injury in your defensive line. You are not going to be sidewaysing, like you're not going to go, oh, McKenna sideways to Yo. You want to go like McKenna down, someone up premium. You don't want to be going sideways to a mid-pricer who's going to make some money in a sense. You want to try and go premiums as much as possible. So I don't doubt some people would go sideways to him, but it's like, hey, McKenna, you've made some money. Now I'm just going to like roll that into the next person and hope he succeeds rather than just going, hey, you're downgraded, someone else's upgrade, and like Wilmot down and McKenna up premium. Like that would be ideal. So I don't think many people would bring him in. I think he was so highly owned in the preseason where I'm kind of tempted to get on that and see how it goes. More importantly, that would then give me about 170,000, so I could actually go and bring, like, say, Green to a Clurry and go that way. So Yo gets me around 90. Ridley's only be getting me around 90. Speculative, of course. Don't, in hindsight, just thinking through. Horrible move, I know, but ballsy, and it could get me what I want, so that's why I'm considering it. And then Green up. Now, that is the option. The other option is I could go down to a Bose, which I don't like, so I'm not going to go this option. To then go Goulden up. So, see, this is the issue you have with Clary. So, realistically, the best play for me would probably be to get rid of, it's either Green or Bontempelli. And if it's Green, I can't get enough money from Callahan to do it. So, unless there's a 102K, so unless it's like Kincotter or whatever his name is from Carlton comes out as a debut at 102,000, which would be tempting, because that would allow me to then go Green straight up to Clary, and I would probably look at doing that. Bontempelli I still highly rate, so higher break even though probably goes all right coming up, but then I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to be putting a VC or C on, probably VC Bont, but I'm not going to put a C on Bontempelli. Laird's very risky, even though I put the C on him this week. So Clary as a captain option, I just think I can sleep better at night. And I think with their bunny run coming, if you're not on him, it's going to be really hard. So I'm just trying to have a look at Bontempelli. So they actually have a fairly good draw coming up as well. So Richmond, who already said they leak points, they play Port Adelaide in Adelaide. So they go from MCG to Adelaide. Optus, so they go play Perth. Dockers over there. And then they have Marvel against the Hawks. So it's interesting whether they do tag or don't tag there. Giants, Carlton. And this is where the fun probably starts because they go from Mars and then TO. So you go Adelaide and Suns. And then they have an absolute massive Marvel run. Like Geelong, Port, North, Fremantle again, Collingwood, a game at the SCG against Sydney, Essendon. They play at Mars against the Giants, back to Marvel against Richmond. Like that's a huge run through that part. So I'm considering just going Callahan down, going Bontempelli to Clary just to kind of mitigate that damage. Higher ownership as well, captain option as well, and kind of gets me there with some cash up my sleeve that I can then look to make later. Yeah, so 36%. Look, he's going well enough that I'm considering it, but Bont is also more versatile to dropping the 100, whereas Clary's more likely to drop 130s and more, which is why the captain option sort of comes into play. So, look, there's no right or wrong way to do it. I'm probably quite tempted to just sit on my hands this week because I didn't last week. That's the other factor. I'd have to then burn another boost, which I'm not that keen on doing. But, again, you kind of need to go aggressive and get the team you want early enough so that way you're not being too reactionary. Now, I'm not too much on points chasing. Don't be chasing points. I think, like LDU could be okay because he's at a basement price, but I wouldn't be going, say, Green to an LDU. I wouldn't be going like Ridley to like a Ryan from Fremantle or something. Like that's really sideways trading. So I'd probably just leave those points in play. But when you look at like, say, the number one scorer in the competition, in their position, it becomes kind of hard to ignore because if you don't get them, then you're not catching those points up on your opposition. That's the issue. So if like Clary, number one in his position, I don't think anything has changed. He's better than Laird as far as like the output there. And because people are putting the captain on him, he just rolled last week. So rolled so many, that 100 points, that 50 from him, and then the extra 50 from captain, or 30, was it 40 points more from captaincy that I had? So that, 80 points is pretty much the difference as far as that ranking slide. So I think it's a real big factor here where I just kind of need to do it and get on. I know Chris is probably a little bit more against it. The other option is I go Grundy as a short-term band-aid, pass on English and hope that he gets injured or drops a poor score over the next few weeks is another consideration. English also has a high ceiling, so he's also dropped like 200 and gone pretty big some other times, and he just looks super freakish. So, yeah, look, that's the other option, I guess, Grundy. But see, Grundy played against Brisbane pretty much the whole game ruck. Gawn went down super early, and he got like 90-odd Dream Team and 70-odd Supercoach, or if that. So, yes, he did well last week, which is why people are tempted. And he's at a good enough price. But I think Chris said it really well as well, because he might make you 50 or 60K. I don't think he's getting up to 600,000, which is where you probably want him to be in order to really make some cash. And then when Gawn comes back in, you're going to have to throw money at him anyway to go up to probably, it looks like, a Witts or an English. So he's not going to get TPP because Gawn won't be back long enough. Gawn's already at peak price, so you can't even go from Grundy to Gawn because you need Gawn to play at least, 3 rounds or so in order to really drop in price on that cycle, which means that if you're kind of forced to nearly either get off early and throw money at him to get to a premium, or if you're looking at, say, a Gawn, then Grundy's going to lose cash for 3 weeks until Gawn plateaus out anyway. So I think it's just going to be a huge issue. It might not be an issue for you now. Like, I could get him now and get Clary, but it'll probably cost me more later. So it's still going to cost me a trade if I bring him in, whereas English, if I bring in, he's only costing me a trade if he gets injured, and he's going to be a high price anyway if that happens. So if he stays fit, I think he's definitely number one. If he stays fit, I think Clary's number one, which is why I'm looking to kind of move heaven and earth to get them in. So yeah, look, that's it. I'm trying to also buy time until Sheasel and Zeeble can get into defense, or one of them at least, and really secure that there as well. Back on the previous statement as well, that's why Dacos I thought was a must-have. High ownership, high damage, looks to be a top 6. And again, if you don't get on and they look like they have that role, it's really, really, really hard to catch up on. So look, Ridley is an issue for me. I am definitely looking to move him on. Break even, I think it's just a touch over 100. Is it a 108? 119? What? That's crept up. Okay, so that's an issue. What's he projected to go down? 13 if he gets an 89. Okay, that's not too bad just yet. If I could wait until DPP moves, that would be even better. Ouch. So, look, the issue I have here, these defenders kind of suck a little bit, to be honest. Wilmot, you can get on field. Just trying to buy time. Round 6 is where the DPPs come in. This week, though, I would be looking at probably Laird VC into a Bont C if I didn't have him. If I still have Bont, then I don't mind him as a VC or Laird as a VC. I think Laird towed up last time against... Where is it? Fremantle, 131 previously. No, he hasn't done it well. Okay, so I'm going to ignore that. He's done all right in Adelaide, though, so I might just kind of see how they go over that one. So that's pretty much it. I'm just trying to mitigate the risk as far as rankings and points. If I was playing for leagues, I wouldn't care. So your opponent has Clary for a few weeks. Who cares? I'll get him later. It's no big deal. So that's just the issue with playing for overall and trying to really look at those strategies and stuff going forward. So fingers crossed for Constable. I think Philippu's doing well enough. So I should probably map out what I would actually like to do. So the easiest one for me is probably just to go and was it GWS? And he's played 2 games, so it'd be like Rouston. Look, I think he's done fairly well. I could look at sort of Phillips, depending on if they're named, etc. But look, Phillips was sub the first game and scored okay. Played well last week, but they were missing 2 of their premium mids anyway, so that doesn't really give me much confidence on that. And so I think Roaston's, he probably got about another 3 to 4 weeks probably in him. which means I'm hoping for about 3 price rises, maybe makes me 100 and hopefully 100 to 150, and then I can sort of look to move him on there. But importantly, just frees up that cash at this point in time. I'm not playing Callahan on field anyway, because that way, he's here, so I can play Goulden on field instead, and then Chandler I can sort of play on field or loop a few around them. So I'll be able to like loophole, like a Baker or someone like that to kind of see how I go, and then play Chandler or not play Chandler later in the week. So, but against West Coast, I think I'm pretty keen to let Chandler ride, and I think a few other people are playing them as well. And that's about switching it anyway, because I did have a system where I had Sheasel kind of off the field in round 1, and now he's doing well enough that he's on field. Chandler looks like he's getting enough points that he's coming on field, and that's where I'm sort of shifting as you go. And you have to try and adapt early enough, and hope things work out. So obviously I did take a risk, and it didn't really work out last week. Ainsworth's Darcy Cameron injured, Carmichael McInnes is in, Pryor. Okay, nothing too crazy there. So I'm just looking at the teams for tomorrow. Rich isn't back in, so that's another good news here. So Wilmot back flank and McKenna back flank. So because Rich is out, so that looks like how they're going it. So that should be good, especially the fast-moving style that Collingwood like to play. I'd definitely be having Wilmot and McKenna probably on field. Will they both go well? I'm not sure, but someone should, because they like to move and go fast in transition, which means that they can also sort of slingshot and go fast back the other way. So, yeah, look, that's it for that part. So look, let me know what you think. It's not a perfect system. I just have to, unfortunately, if I want him, I've just got to let something go. And I think Clary's going to hurt me more than like a Bont or someone else coming up. So, look, Bont, because of the high break even, I think Laird is still a good enough sort of VC or C where he should chip away for the 110s. But Bont's got that high, it goes up and down. You've also got, a lot of people sharing points at the Dogs as well, which is probably the other issue. Whereas Laird, there's not many at Adelaide taking points. So otherwise, the Dogs have got, Liberatore, Smith, Trelawn's in there, English, McRae. Like there's so many. You've got Richards, Daniel, Short, the short guy, Daniel. So yeah, that's the issue. So I think there's also a lot of points to be gone there, which means, Bont really has to go big in order to go big. And there's so many other players, like if they play a weaker side or a weaker mid, it could be easily one of those other players that just really racks up. So that's the difference, where I still like Bont. I still think he's going to go that 115 or 110. I was thinking 120 earlier in the year, but I'm not as sure now because of the changes like Trelaw in there, etc. So I've probably cooled my reservations there a little bit, which means that for me, I think Clary is probably more the important part for me this year. So yeah, look, that's it for this point in time. I should probably have a quick look at some of these questions as well on Twitter, just because I said I would. So let's have a little bit of a look and see. All right, so it'd help if I actually went to my profile. That'd be nice. So yeah, that way if I did, I'd go Laird VC into a Clary C, and that way I'd probably look to conserve trades for a few weeks, let these rookies really rack up a little bit, and then probably target Stewart in a couple of weeks' time once he pitters out. So that would be the idea, is that get rid of a rookie, upgrade Ridley to Stewart, and then start to actually look to generate more based on opportunities rather than premiums. So I think Bont will still get to 580 or so at some point, and a lot of these other premiums will be looking more for opportunity. Whereas for Clary, it's not about opportunity; it's just about getting him in. So, a couple of questions first of all, and I'll put this up on Premiere, so I'll be on the chat as well. So shout out chat, or give us a donation if you're really keen. Am I keen to play? So Cliffo, paying overs. He's not going to go 100 versus West Coast, and no, that's not going to happen. And again, they used to have actual defensive mids. So tell me who would actually be a good defensive mid for West Coast, because I think Redden was the guy, and he's gone. So anything that's happened over the last 3 years, I don't think is as relevant as what people are suggesting. The only thing that could change is the DPP, where he actually changes positions. That would actually be an issue. But we're not going to know until we see. So a lot of people will be on that captain train. Probably still racks up 110 anyway, even as a defender mid. Callahan to Ralston. So that's what I was exactly looking at. JVR, I think it's a little bit early on some of those guys. It is an option. The other thing to note is I might actually kind of make a move somewhere else if that was the case. So look, he did well enough Ben Brown has a sore back, so I'm hoping to see if he's named. I don't really like going after one round on some of these players, and I think Ralston, at least with the CBAs he's getting, has scope to do better and score more over the next 3 weeks or 4 weeks. So, yeah. So that's what I'm kind of hoping, that when you have Perryman maybe has to come back in for a week in the VFL or something or other, would be very, very interesting at this point in time. But yeah, if you have a bad rank as well, so John DJ59 was saying, like, if you are ranked poorly, then you kind of need to try and either, if you fade English and you fade Clary, you're going to have to be super aggressive from round 6 to 10 to try and upgrade so you have more premiums on field, and just hope that those players will have a bad game and then you pick them up at the dip. So I don't recommend paying $700,000 for a player. But when you look at the scores coming through, the high ownership, and the fact that he'll be used as a captain, I'm a little concerned that I'll be losing sort of 30 to 60 points a week because of the additional that he'll score plus the double on the captain compared to my captain. It's an issue. So when you look at 6 weeks of it, it's 360 points maybe that I might actually be down, and then all of a sudden I'm ranked, you ranked 15,000, and you can try and work your way back towards being 2,000 overall or 1,000 overall, but you won't ever be able to make that push. So that's the risk it for the biscuit. Last week would have worked well. If Darcy Cameron was fit, then I could have definitely made a move and changed Ridley or something, would have been nice instead. But look, that is how it is. And that's pretty much how I'm sitting there with my team. So as you can tell, I've pretty much said 36 minutes on a whole bunch of nothing. So if you are like me, let me know what you're thinking, because maybe I have said something that has actually resonated with you and you say, yeah, I'm going to risk it for the biscuit. Or you're like, maybe I just need to sit on my hands like Ben should have last week, which is fine. That's why we play this game, and you live and die by the sword. And for someone who's trying to rank high overall, it's sometimes the risks you take work out and other times they do not. So yeah, either way, at least I'll be getting the number one in their position, and I can adjust and look for value elsewhere after that. So to me, English, Oliver, non-negotiable. You can get them later at cheaper, hopefully. Well, definitely cheaper. But how long will that take? So that's the issue. That's it from me. Talk to you soon. I'm going to put this up on Premiere now, and I'll talk to you up online as well. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.